Let me talk to the one who's tired, the one who's been showing up but hasn't seen the fruit, the one who feels stuck between a promise and a process, the one who's praying, posting, pushing, but silently fighting to not give up. Let me tell you something right now. Consistency isn't cute, it's a war. You've got to force yourself to be consistent. We don't always get to feel ready. We don't always wake up motivated. Sometimes you have to move with shaky hands. Sometimes you have to show up with a weary heart. But hear me, obedience will carry you where motivation won't. You want purpose, you want results, then discipline needs to become your decision, not your emotion. Because if you keep waiting to feel like it, you'll wait yourself right out of your calling. Some of you have been praying for open doors, but let me tell you, God doesn't bless potential, He blesses persistence. It's the people who keep showing up, the ones who stay in position when the crowd walks away, the ones who keep digging when the ground is dry. You keep saying, I'm burnt out. But baby, you're not burnt out. You're just battling inconsistency. You keep quitting every time it doesn't look like success. But success doesn't always look like a spotlight. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like sowing without clapping. Sometimes it looks like being faithful in the unseen. And listen, stop entertaining the exit plan. You're exhausted because you keep flirting with quitting. Your energy is scattered because your focus is divided. When you finally decide, I'm not leaving, I'm not giving up, I'm not restarting again, that's when consistency stops being a fight and starts becoming your flow. Because hear me, heaven does not respond to hype. It responds to hustle, to obedience, to you waking up and saying, this hurts, but I'm still here. This is hard, but I'm still going. You don't have to be the most talented. You don't have to be the most followed. You don't have to have the perfect words. You just have to be faithful. Keep showing up until your results have no choice but to show out. This isn't about feelings. It's about follow through. Because your breakthrough, it's not on the other side of a miracle. It's on the other side of your consistency. So today, force yourself to get up. Force yourself to keep building. Force yourself to push through the dry seasons. Force yourself to stay when it's easier to quit. Because every time you show up when you don't feel like it, the enemy loses another inch. Your purpose gains another route. Your future comes one step closer to fulfillment. You've cried, you've prayed, you've survived. Now it's time to be consistent, not just today, not just when it's convenient, but every day on purpose, in power, without apology. Because this time, it's not just motivation. This time, it's discipline. This time, you're not waiting for the right moment. You are the moment, so force yourself, because the version of you that stays consistent, that version shakes hell and heaven stands at attention. You don't always get to feel ready. That's the reality so many avoid. We live in a world where people are taught to follow their feelings, to wait until it feels right, to move when they're inspired. But growth doesn't happen in inspiration, it happens in discipline. Discipline isn't something that lands on your lap like a blessing. It's not a gift you unwrap one day and suddenly you're transformed. No, discipline is a decision. A decision to show up when it's uncomfortable, to keep going when it's quiet, to put one foot in front of the other when no one's cheering. The lie that's been whispered into too many ears is that motivation will always be there if you're really called. That if this dream, this assignment, this purpose were truly yours, you'd feel excited to do it every day, but that's a trap. Even the most anointed people feel exhausted. Even the most driven people want to give up. The difference between the ones who stay stuck and the ones who move forward is not strength, it's decision. They decided that their feelings don't get to be in charge. They decided that discomfort doesn't equal disqualification. They decided that even when it hurts, they still have a job to do. The truth is, your destiny is waiting on the other side of your decision to be disciplined, not just once, not just when it's easy, but day in and day out. You can't microwave purpose. You can't shortcut obedience. You can't dance your way into your assignment and hope emotions carry you through. Because when the lights go off, when the fire dies down, when the room gets silent, what keeps you anchored? What keeps you showing up? It's not hype, it's not applause, it's not the number of likes or shares or even support. It's discipline, that internal commitment to keep pushing even when nothing on the outside confirms what you're building. That's what changes everything. That's what separates the ones who only dream from the ones who build. Building takes time, building takes effort. Building takes returning to the same space again and again with faith, even when your flesh is screaming to walk away. You don't just stumble into greatness. You build it brick by brick with the hands of consistency, with the heart of surrender, and with the will to endure. This world will give you a million reasons to quit. Your own mind will whisper doubts, fears, insecurities that sound like truth. You'll question your timing. You'll question your ability. You'll question whether it's even worth it. And in those moments, the enemy of your soul will try to convince you that what you're doing doesn't matter, that your obedience isn't making a difference, that you're wasting time staying committed to something that hasn't yet produced results. But that's when you have to remember that discipline isn't for the days you feel strong. It's for the days you feel weak. It's for the days when everything around you says stop, and something deep inside you says, no, keep going. A discipline is born in resistance. It's forged in fire. It's matured in silence. You don't grow when everything is perfect. You grow when you persevere through everything that isn't. Discipline is not just about what you do. It's about what you refuse to let go of. It's about holding on when everything in you wants to release. It's about remaining faithful to what you said you would do long after the mood you said it in has left. Repetition has a way of unlocking things that comfort will never reveal. When you show up day after day, even when nothing seems to change, even when the atmosphere feels stale and your heart feels tired, something sacred starts to break open. We live in a culture that glamorizes the next thing, new seasons, fresh starts, sudden shifts. But what if the miracle isn't in the next thing? What if the miracle is buried deep in what you've already been doing, just waiting for you to dig long enough to uncover it? Repetition doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means something is growing under the surface. Every prayer whispered in weariness, every journal entry written in frustration, every task completed without recognition is building something invisible. And in time, that invisible work becomes undeniable fruit. Revelation doesn't often come when you're standing on the mountain. It comes while you're walking through the valley, doing the same faithful thing again and again with no sign of reward. Consistency is how we gain clarity. It's how we learn the deeper truth that inspiration alone can't teach us. When you do something repeatedly, you begin to notice things others miss. You start to see the hand of God moving in the smallest details. You become aware of your own growth in ways that surprises you. That's because repetition refines your perspective. It sharpens your discernment. You start to realize that what felt like a routine was actually a divine classroom. You weren't just showing up to survive. You were being trained, molded, shaped. You weren't just doing it again and again out of obligation. You were laying bricks, setting foundations, planting seeds, and that's what most people miss. They want to skip to the outcome without honoring the process. They want the revelation without the repetition. But that's not how transformation works. You don't get to wake up wise, healed, or ready. You grow into it by doing the work daily, and that's where the beauty lies, in the places where you wanted to quit but didn't, in the decisions you made to try one more time, in the quiet corners of your life where you chose to remain instead of run. That's where real growth starts to breathe. That's where real power begins to rise, not in the rush, but in the rhythm each time you repeat a step, even one that feels insignificant. Something in you is shifting. Your muscles, emotional, spiritual, even physical, are developing memory. You begin to respond differently. You react slower. You trust faster. You stop needing the outcome to validate your efforts because you begin to trust the process more than the prize. You realize you don't have to see it to believe it. You just have to keep doing it. You don't have to feel it to trust it. You just have to stay with it. Because eventually, repetition reveals what was hidden all along. That you were stronger than you thought, more prepared than you believed, and closer than you imagined. Repetition is God's way of stretching us without breaking us. It's in the doing over and over that our false identities fall away. It's in the showing up again that our excuses start to die. It's in the returning to the same place with a renewed mind that we start to see new doors we never noticed before. Because revelation doesn't always come in loud moments. It comes when you're consistent enough to see the patterns, humble enough to learn from them, and bold enough to keep walking through them. The greatest clarity often comes from the most consistent steps. The ones no one sees, the ones no one applauds, the ones that don't look powerful but are shifting everything internally. That's the space where identity is rebuilt. That's where faith becomes solid. That's where legacy is formed. One of the biggest reasons consistency slips through our fingers is because we leave the door cracked open for quitting. We say we're all in, but somewhere deep in the back of our mind, we're still entertaining the possibility of walking away. We build backup plans, we rehearse what giving up would look like, we start creating mental eggs, it routes just in case it gets too hard, too lonely, too long. And the moment you do that, your energy becomes divided. Your commitment becomes diluted, your purpose gets cloudy. The fight isn't just to keep going, it's to stop giving yourself permission to stop. Because the truth is, most people don't fail because they didn't have what it takes. They fail because they never fully committed in the first place. They had one foot in destiny and one foot in doubt. And that split focus will rob you every time when you're constantly second, guessing whether you should stay. You waste emotional energy trying to convince yourself of what you were already called to do. You relive the decision over and over again instead of standing firm in it. That kind of double-mindedness creates confusion. It creates instability. It keeps you spinning in circles instead of pressing forward in confidence. Consistency isn't just about doing the thing, it's about killing the option to stop doing the thing. It's about settling it in your spirit that even when it gets dry, even when it gets uncomfortable, even when it feels like nothing is working, quitting is off the table. The problem is, we treat commitment like a contract that we can cancel at any time. But purpose doesn't respond to convenience. Destiny isn't built on mood swings. It's built on resolve, on the kind of grit that says, I may be scared, I may be tired, I may not know what's coming next, but I'm not backing out. That's the kind of posture that makes hell nervous. That's the kind of decision that makes progress inevitable. Because when you stop entertaining the idea of quitting, your energy no longer goes into managing fear, it goes into moving forward. Your faith becomes louder than your doubt. Your actions become sharper. Your vision gets clearer. Every time you give quitting a voice, it grows stronger. Every time you replay the thought of stopping, it starts to sound like a viable option, but you weren't built to be half in. You weren't designed to just try. You were created to endure, to last, to persist, but endurance only grows when quitting dies. Some of the clarity you're waiting on won't come until you cancel the exit plan. Some of the strength you're praying for won't rise until you decide there's no turning back. It's not about having the perfect strategy. It's about having a heart that says, I will not give up. When you silence the voice of retreat, you unlock a new level of consistency. You begin to move with deeper focus. You stop checking for confirmation every 5 minutes and start building like it's already approved. You stop waiting for signs and start creating systems. You stop needing validation and start walking in identity. Because you know this is what you're called to. You know quitting won't fix the pressure. It'll only delay the purpose, and that kind of awareness births power. That kind of decision births progress. But you won't access any of it until you stop looking for the emergency exit. The pressure you feel is not a sign to run. It's a sign to dig deeper. The resistance you're facing is not a cue to stop. It's proof that you're on the right track. And the moment you shut the door to quitting, everything in your life starts to align around the fact that you are not going anywhere. Success doesn't always look like movement. Sometimes it looks like showing up in silence. Sometimes it looks like doing the same thing again with no applause, no confirmation, no evidence that it's working. That's the part most people run from. They want the glow of the win without the grind of the wait. But consistency teaches you how to build when nobody's watching. It teaches you how to believe without constant validation. It grows you in the soil of obscurity so that when the light finally hits your life, you have roots strong enough to carry the weight of visibility. Because without those roots, success can crush you. Recognition can drown you. You have to be consistent in the dark so you can handle the exposure in the light. Most people don't fail because of a lack of opportunity. They fail because they didn't prepare during the process. They gave up when it didn't feel exciting anymore. They turned away when the spotlight dimmed, but there is power in staying. There is strength in routine. There is a miracle in doing what's mundane. You're not stuck, You're being stretched. You're not behind. You're being built. The most powerful changes don't always happen with noise. They happen when you choose to get up again, give again, work again. Even when it feels like nothing is shifting, there's a reason God allows certain doors to stay closed for a while. It's not to punish you. It's to prepare you. If he gave you everything you wanted right now, you wouldn't know how to manage it. If he opened every platform, handed you every promise, and flooded your life with success while you're still inconsistent, it would sabotage you. So he gives you the gift of repetition, the gift of process, the gift of obscurity, because in that space you learn how to depend on something deeper than motivation. You start to rely on discipline. You stop needing a crowd to clap for you in order to know you're called. You stop needing a result to validate your assignment. You keep going because you know your consistency is not wasted. Every act of obedience matters. Every moment you choose to stay faithful is creating a foundation for the next level. But if you abandon the process too early, you interrupt what God is trying to develop in you. There are some things that only come through time. There are certain levels of strength, wisdom, clarity, and grace that you can't rush. You don't become who you're called to be overnight. You grow into it one consistent step at a time, and the truth is, when you keep showing up, you're already winning. You're winning against fear. You're winning against apathy. You're winning against your own excuses. You're telling your doubt that it doesn't get the final say. You don't have to see the full picture to keep painting. You don't have to know how the story ends to stay in the scene. Sometimes faith looks like repetition without recognition. It looks like trusting that every quiet step still counts, that every invisible act still carries weight in the spiritual realm, that every disciplined decision is shaping you into the version of yourself that can carry the promise you've been praying for. And when you start to see consistency as an act of war against every lie that says you'll never finish, you stop seeing it as a burden and start embracing it as a weapon. You use it to tear down fear. You use it to silence the voice of discouragement. You use it to remind yourself that purpose is not always loud, but it is always persistent. You don't need to go viral to be valuable. You don't need to be seen to be significant. You just need to be consistent in what God placed in your hands and trust that the harvest will come in its time. There's a version of you on the other side of discipline that you haven't even met yet. A version of you that's stronger, clearer, bolder, and more focused than anything you've known. But that version won't show up until you push past the comfort zone, until you say no to the easy road, until you realize that growth is not found in the moments that feel good. It's found in the moments that stretch you, the uncomfortable days, the long nights, the frustrating setbacks. Those are the proving grounds. That's where character is shaped. That's where spiritual maturity takes root. You're not just building habits or building identity. You're learning how to show up as the person God designed, not just the one you've been used to being. Consistency introduces you to the deeper layers of who you really are. It peels back the temporary emotions and reveals the eternal truth underneath. You begin to learn how to separate your worth from your wins. You stop defining your value based on how productive you feel or how praised you are. Instead, you start to carry peace in the midst of process. You begin to walk with purpose even in the presence of pressure. You begin to find joy not in what changes around you, but in what's being transformed within you. And that transformation can only happen when you stay long enough in the same place to let the work of God complete its course. There's a refining that takes place when you stay consistent. Things start to fall off. Old mindsets, scarcity mentalities, the need to prove yourself, the obsession with performance, those things lose their grip because consistency creates clarity. You no longer move to impress. You move with intention. You're no longer swayed by trends. You're rooted in truth, and that kind of foundation can't be shaken. It makes you dangerous to anything trying to pull you off track, because you're not just moving for movement's sake. You're aligned, you're assigned, and you're advancing with authority. So many people start with passion, but fail to follow through because they never built the stamina for the quiet seasons. The seasons where results are slow, the seasons where applause is absent, the seasons where the oil is still flowing but the evidence hasn't caught up. That's where the weight of destiny is either carried or dropped. That's where consistency becomes your superpower, because the enemy doesn't know what to do with a believer who won't back down. A woman or man who keeps showing up, keeps pressing forward, keeps holding on to the promise when everything else says let go. That kind of faith terrifies hell. That kind of perseverance shakes things in the spirit, because it's not dependent on what's seen, it's anchored in what's spoken. Every act of consistency is a declaration of war against complacency. It says, I refuse to be average, I refuse to settle, I refuse to sit down on the dreams I was called to build. It speaks louder than hype, it goes further than talent, because consistency doesn't rely on your mood. It draws from your mission. And when you know your mission, you don't have to beg for motivation. You don't have to chase momentum. You just keep moving. You keep pressing. You keep building even when the outcome isn't clear, because purpose always precedes proof. You walk by faith, not by feelings. You build by obedience, not by outcome. There will be days where the progress feels invisible, where you question if it's worth it, where the temptation to quit knocks on your door louder than ever. But it's in those moments you have to remember who you're becoming. You're not just trying to complete a task. You're becoming someone who can carry what you once prayed for, and that requires endurance. That requires fire. That requires the kind of resilience that says, even if it doesn't happen today, I'm still showing up. Consistency is not about speed, it's about staying power. We live in a world that praises quick wins and overnight success, but anything that comes fast can disappear just as quickly. The things that last are the things built slowly, intentionally, and faithfully. The ones that take time, the ones that don't just impress people but sustain purpose. You can't build something unshakable if your foundation keeps shifting, if your pace keeps changing depending on how you feel. Real strength is revealed not in the sprint but in the slow, steady press forward. It's in the days you don't feel like it but do it anyway. It's in the decisions you make behind closed doors that no one claps for. It's in the refusal to be rushed and the courage to stay committed. Even when the process is longer than you expected, you don't need to be the fastest person in the room. You need to be the one who doesn't quit, the one who doesn't fold under pressure, the one who doesn't let comparison drive their pace. Because when you run your race with focus, with intention, with your eyes locked on what God gave you, you don't have to worry about catching up. You'll arrive right on time. Consistency teaches you how to silence distractions. It shows you how to stop measuring your journey by someone else's highlight reel. It breaks you free from the bondage of performance and roots you in the discipline of purpose. Because your calling is not about how quickly you can get there. It's about how faithfully you can walk every step of the way. There's a weight that comes with what you're building, a responsibility that can't be taken lightly. And consistency gives you the capacity to carry it, to manage it, to grow with it, because the blessing doesn't always show up as overflow. It often shows up as stewardship. Can you manage the quiet? Can you remain faithful when the promise still looks far away? Can you keep showing up when nobody is asking you to, when no one's watching, when no one's clapping? That's where the roots go deep. That's where the endurance is built. That's where the oil starts flowing in the secret place long before anyone sees the fruit. You can't pour from an empty vessel. You can't sustain a calling with bursts of inspiration. You need rhythm, you need rest, you need consistency, and that doesn't mean doing everything perfectly. It means doing what you can with what you have every single day and trusting that God will fill the gaps. You don't need to know how everything will unfold. You just need to keep showing up, keep pressing in, keep holding on to the word He gave you, because every time you choose consistency over convenience, you're declaring that your faith is stronger than your feelings, that your calling is worth more than your comfort, that your destiny is greater than your doubt. There are people who will be blessed by your consistency, people whose lives will shift because you didn't give up. You're not just building something for yourself. You're creating a legacy, one that says, I stayed even when it was hard. I kept going even when it didn't make sense. I showed up when quitting would have been easier. And that kind of faith moves heaven. That kind of discipline multiplies impact. That kind of heart sets the tone for generations to come. You don't have to shout to be powerful. You don't have to be seen to be significant. You just need to keep doing the work you were assigned. Keep planting, keep watering, keep believing. The breakthrough may not happen overnight, but it will happen. not because of how loud you were, but because of how consistent you chose to be. And when it finally comes, you'll know it didn't happen by accident. It happened because you were faithful in the small, you were steady when it was slow, you endured what others walked away from, you showed God that you could be trusted with what He placed in your hands. Consistency is not just a habit, it's a spiritual discipline. It's the daily decision to believe in what God spoke over your life, even when your circumstances try to convince you otherwise. It's refusing to bow to your emotions and choosing to rise in your assignment. You don't need perfect conditions to walk in purpose. You need commitment. You need the kind of fire that says, I will keep showing up. I will keep pressing forward. I will keep doing the work even when I don't see results yet. You were not created to be average. You weren't called to blend in with the crowd or settle for half-finished dreams. The reason the battle has been so intense is because what you carry is valuable, and the enemy knows he can't destroy you, so he tries to distract you. He wants to wear down your will so you'll forfeit what's already yours. But today is the day you draw the line. Today is the day you stop negotiating with inconsistency and take authority over your discipline. You don't have to feel ready, you just have to obey. God honors consistency because it reflects trust. And when you commit to the process, He commits to the promise. So stay the course, refuse to quit. Keep showing up, not for applause, not for recognition, but because there's destiny on your life. And if you'll keep walking, even limping, even crawling, God will meet you in the steps you take. And one day you'll look back and realize the breakthrough wasn't just in the arrival. It was in the becoming. You became strong, you became unshakable, you became consistent, and that changed everything.